There you go. Now the recording has started. So, yeah, welcome everybody. It's nice to see a lot of familiar faces and a lot of new faces too. For this what is going to be probably the last online tasting. Well, the last tasting that has been planned for the rest of the year for me. Yeah, I was really looking forward to this, hosting this tasting. As a lot of you know, the people that know me, you know that I only do stuff out of self-interest. And the reason I wanted to do this was I wanted to open some nice bottles by Thompson Brothers. And because they're so hard to get hold of, I just thought, well, let's just reach out and see if we can do a tasting so we can open like 6 at once. And luckily, these guys just agreed to do this. And lots of DHL stuff afterwards. We're here. We have the bottles open. You have your samples, and we can do this tasting now. So you all know, of course, well, you should know because it was communicated that all the profits for the tasting will go to Cascade, which is a local Belgian bottler who does, well, they basically an independent bottler who gives all their profits to good causes here in Belgium, local causes. So I agreed with them. I thought it was quite fitting that we would do this as a good cause. And we also added one of their bottles to your sample set, the Belgian 13-year-old. So that's for you to enjoy afterwards in the after tasting. People that have joined our tastings, usually, especially the ones on Friday or Saturday, know that after tastings can take very long, even online. So at least you have one sample to start that off with. That all being said, Phil, I'm not going to introduce you. You can introduce yourself, I think. But welcome and very happy that you're here to talk us through these bottlings that you did and your cask sample.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's just start, I think, right?
Okay. Yeah, cool. Yeah, no worries. Well, I am Philip Thompson, and my brother Simon will appear at some point. We own Dornoch Distillery, which is in the north of Scotland. It's on the coast. It's in Sutherland. It's just inside the Sutherland border, across the bridge from Glenmorangie. So if you know where Glenmorangie and Balblair are, we're just a little bit north of that as well, across the bridge. So sort of 10 minutes drive to Glenmorangie, so really close by. So we run very much a micro distillery. So it's extremely tiny. We have about 12,000 LPA a year, and it's in like 60, 50 square meters maybe. Sort of space. It's really tiny. So we'll go on and talk about our production later. The other part of our business is we're, of course, an independent bottler. My brother likes to reaffirm that we are actually independent bottlers as we physically bottle it, but I don't know how I feel about that because I think there's a lot of great indie bottlers who are not bottling. But it's nice to have control of the full process. We'll probably talk about what we do and our plans for the future and what we do in house and so on. So as we go through the tasting, because there's a lot of benefits to actually physically having a warehouse that you work in every day. So yeah, we can talk a little bit about that as we go. But not much else to say about what we do at the moment. But with the tasting, just we're happy to answer questions as we go. Keep everything pretty casual. It's not sorry, I'm just going to send Simon, forward him your email because I think he is not finding it. Just a second.
Yeah, no problem. So for everybody, the ones that have joined our tastings before, just feel free to join and ask questions. If you don't want to ask your questions straight away, just you can put them in the chat, and I'll forward them to Phil and Simon. I'll be your gateway, as it were. Especially if you want to ask some anonymous questions, maybe you want to. There's nothing to fear here, but some people are kind of shy that way. So, but just don't feel shy and just join in, ask questions, and also probably when we're tasting, just share your thoughts about what we're drinking. Tasting that's going to be interesting, I think.
Oh, you're in Belgium, aren't you?
Yes.
Yeah, congratulations! First case of the new variant in Europe.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. We were hoping for that premiere, but and we won this time. Yeah.
Congratulations, it's very good.
Yep, laying in my bed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask about that. It's pretty amazing background. It's quite impressive. I see Peter has a very nice background in Dornoch. It's obviously it looks like that right now in the square. There's not bins flying across as there probably is in this stormy weather. It's really stormy here tonight. It's really quite bad. I think you guys will probably get hit with it as it's kind of driving south. So enjoy in the next couple of days.
Yeah.
I'm quite surprised Ian's here because I imagine Orkney is probably not the best place to ride out a storm with all your trees. Yeah,
Is that the Arwen storm?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So, shall we drink some whiskey?
Yeah, sure. Which one do you want to start with, Phil?
We're going to start with the teaspooned blended malt 2010 from the First Hill Barrels.
So that'll be this one.
I hope so. Yes, that's it. So this is quite a funny little thing. So what we did with this, so first of all, it's teaspoon Milton Duff, and it is First Fill barrels. We bought 4 of them for vatting, and my idea was to do a vatting. I really love Milton Duff. I think it's a great distillate, and we haven't really had the opportunity to bottle much. And annoyingly, it was done as a teaspoon malt. So when we bought the liquid, so I'm going to let my cat in. She's really annoying. I have a Bengal, so she's like really needy of my time, and very noisy as well. So yeah, it's basically we thought, well, we wanted Milton Duff. I bought it blind, but my powers of deduction, I made the assumption the liquid's going to be good because A, Milton Duff's a great distillate, and B, it's from First Fill barrels, full maturation. So when we purchased the liquid, I bought it through a broker, and the liquid.
Simon has joined us too.
Oh, cool.
Hi guys.
Hey, Simon.
I made it. Yeah, apologies. I was told it would be 7:30, but that's your time, not our time. So it's 6:30 over here. Well, almost 7 now. So, hello everyone.
So we're just talking about the teaspoon Milton Duff in a moment. So that's dram number 1. So when we do these labels, we work with, it's actually our importer over in Indonesia, a guy called Andrew, and he, I like the sort of sprue labels that he does, and we wanted to kind of give some hints as to what the distillate could be, what the spirit is. Obviously, we put Plus Garden on there, and that was a little bit obviously a nod to Plus Garden Abbey, but also a nod to some of the old Italian bottlers like Sestante, who would use Plus Garden for their kind of Milton Duffs and things. So it was a little bit of a kind of tribute going on there. And then each of the items is kind of representative of something within the liquid. So
I'll put it up again so we can.
I can talk through it.
Yeah, there we are.
So obviously you have the water wheel from Milton Duff. You've got this amazing kind of 70s James Bond bad guy villain console from the distillery. A monk's habit, which I thought obviously it's not West Flaithrin, it's going to be Plus Garden. We have the little teaspoon for doing the teaspooning, and then we have a very in-joke, which is this hat is my friend John's father's choice of headwear, and his favourite distillery is Milton Duff. So it was a really that was a little bit of a niche kind of reference.
So this is not a whiskey Bible reference.
Yeah, it's definitely not a whiskey Bible reference. No.
Okay, that's good.
So yeah, First Fill bourbon barrels, we diluted to 50%. I think it was kind of coming in at the high 50s, low 60s across all of the casks. But I wanted to have something which was just like super easy to drink, just a kind of general dram without too much kind of thought behind it. And I think we've kind of achieved that. We kind of, on the note of dilution, we do tactically dilute from time to time. So I like 48%, I like 50%. I think they're good strengths. And combine that with we do no chill filtration. We only do a maximum of 15 micron filter. on our spirit. So you've got a really kind of chunky, dense spirit. You know, we're not stripping out a lot of the oils. So combine, you know, a decent strength with a very much a non-chill filtered and minimal kind of, you know, intrusion on our whiskey, then you end up with something that has a lot of character without us having to kind of tailor it too much. So yeah.
Do you do this with the blended malts only, or also with like single malts? Do you put them to a lower degree of alcohol for reasons?
It completely depends on the liquids. It really depends
Okay.
on the liquid, how it tastes, how we feel about it. We always chose never to put cask strength on the label, but we like the idea because obviously having the warehouse makes it really easy for us to make kind of quick decisions on things. So we can get a sample, we can play with it, we can decide what we're going to do, if we're going to re-rack it, whether we're going to keep it, or whether we're going to bottle it. And yeah, it just gives us so many more options. So yeah, we just kind of take a view on every single cast that we get in as to how we're going to treat it.
The main reason is it gives us a bit of flexibility with the logistics, because we'll receive a cask, and when we decide to bottle a cask, we can move very quickly. We can have it vatted, filtered, bottled in a day if we want to. Now, when we order labels to make it cost effective, we usually have to order lots and lots of labels all at the same time. So if we line up, say, 5 casks we want to bottle, and say one of them's at 58%, we'll have the label printed at, say, 57.7%. And the reason for that is the labels can take, a few weeks to come by. So it kind of covers us for any drop in strength between ordering labels and receiving the liquid, or if the gauging was slightly off. So it gives us a bit of flexibility, because what some people do is they'll bottle the whiskey and then they'll commission the labels to be printed. So you bottle it, and then you've got bottles of whiskey sitting in your warehouse. Now we don't have a lot of space for 2, 3, 4 weeks while you wait for the labels to arrive. So for us, we can move a lot quicker if we have the labels ordered in advance and time them to arrive with the whiskey, because we just don't have the space to have lots and lots of releases sitting around unlabeled. So it gives us a bit of flexibility there, and it keeps us fast, I think, is the important thing.
Yeah.
How many of these releases do you do on average in a year?
In the last 12 months, we've done over 100 releases of whiskey, almost exactly 100. So we do a lot of it's 100 casks, and a couple of those casks a few of those casks are going to a vatting of 2 casks. So 100, it's almost exactly 100 casks, 90 something releases. So we do quite a few exclusives for some bars, for some clubs, for certain markets and importers as well. So there's a lot of what we do you don't necessarily see on the UK or European market as well. So yeah, we've been quite busy. I've been trying to get to the bottom of what some of the bigger bottlers release, and so I think the Scotch Malt Whisky Society do about 600, 700 casks a year, I think. Douglas Lang, I think, do about 400 a year. Does that sound about right, Phil?
I think so. I wouldn't confirm those figures, but it sounds about right. I think SMWS 600-700 is about right for SMWS. Certainly from what we discovered at bottling halls.
Yeah. So and how does that work? If I say I have a bar, I want to do a bottling with you, I call you and you look for a cask then for me, or do you have them lined up, or how does that work?
Before we start, how good is your bar?
Oh, I've got a really good bar. I mean, it's lots of exposure for you in it.
Have we been there? Have we been there drinking before?
Oh, not yet. But you haven't been to Belgium in the last 2 years, so.
Yeah, I mean, we don't hold a huge inventory of stock, mainly because our distilling operation is so intense on our cash flow. So it costs us a huge amount. We work without debts. We've got no equity given away in the business. We have our original crowdfunding, but it is so expensive to make
Mhm.
the spirit that we make. So generally, when somebody approaches us, we will go and use our sources and try and find something appropriate for them. We do hold a small inventory of stock, but compared to a lot of the other independent bottlers, no, because what they'll tend to do is like buy 3 casks, bottle 1, keep 2, cover the costs on the 3 with selling 1, and so on. With us, we just have to keep feeding the beast of our distillery and keep
Mhm.
paying for very expensive barley and very labor-intensive processes to continue making Dornoch. So it's slightly different how other independent bottlers function. So yeah, we would look at it on a sort of individual by individual basis. Look at what you're looking for, and then basically see what we have available. If not, we'll go and use our contacts to try and find something appropriate.
But that works the same way for your own releases, I guess. Just once in a while, you go out and you go looking for casks to bottle for yourself. Or
Yeah,
how does that?
it's fairly self-perpetuating at the moment. I mean, it's just kind of a I'm sure Fiat is in the same position where things kind of just appear because you're doing it every single day. It's a general conversation around with independent bottlers between us where we all go, oh, there's not enough. There's all the good stuff's gone, and
It's getting too expensive.
it's getting too expensive. There's no names on the liquid anymore, and so on. And I'm in full agreement, and I would say yeah, for sure. But there's still some good liquid available at pretty fair prices. I think the consumer maybe has to change their or it's up to us to kind of not educate, but provide the consumer with maybe things like the Plus Guard and a teaspoon malt of Milton Duff, give them hints to the liquid source. Because otherwise, I mean, we're £45 a bottle for that, which I think is kind of at the market value for that sort of thing. Whereas if it was Milton Duff, it would probably be 65 or it'd be 70 in the current market in first fill barrels. So if the consumer is willing to say, oh yeah, we'll listen to the guys in Dornoch, hopefully it's going to be a good liquid, it's going to be good drinking, then you can have some great stuff for pretty fair money. But it's anything named like any of the big names, the sort of, don't like say the Premier Cru distilleries, those traditional Premier Cru distilleries, anything branded and named by them, anything sherried, anything peated, tends to hold a premium. So the market's weird. Obviously, we're in a funny situation whereby we want to continue being independent bottlers. Long term, it's definitely something we want to carry on with. But we're also going to have our own stock, and we're also going to expand our own production. So long term, we have that kind of safety net that we'll always have Dornoch, whereas a lot of independent bottlers don't. And there's only so many refill inch goers you can put out at 10, 12 years old without the market rejecting it. So, yeah, it's a weird situation, but we're very fortunate because, as Simon, going back to what Simon said, we have our own warehouse. We can act really quickly. We can get a cask in, we can make a decision on it, we can have it on our website. If we want to, we do prefer having a longer resting period. We prefer to rest our spirits and so on. But yeah, should we move on while we're chatting?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, if you guys want to. I mean, is there any questions? Or
Usually questions start after the second whiskey.
get another glass.
So we go on with the next one is I always get this pronunciation wrong, the Altavane.
That's pretty close.
It's pretty close, yeah. Well, thank you
Sounds
for being gentle with me.
There we go. Now, Philip,
There it is.
Have you got the details on the cask there, Phil?
Yeah. So this is a refill barrel, 47.2 naturally low kind of strength. We've also got another one we're going to bottle soon, which again is a naturally low strength. This is so it's a refill barrel, 24 years old, 176 bottles, with their very cool milk bottle label, which I think Altavania translates to like burn of milk or something like that, like a stream of milk.
I thought these were these like cola candy bottles.
Oh, they're milk bottles.
They're milk bottles. Okay. Now I get it.
So the kind of, it's meant to look like you're looking into a bag, like an old paper bag. It's kind of meant to look like. So yeah, we bottled this exclusive for the UK. We're going to do a sister cask, probably as an export exclusive next year, probably January or February. But yeah, I really like it. I think it's a pretty underrated distillery. I think most kind of Speyside whiskies from refill wood after 24 years tend to develop pretty nice kind of orchard fruit character. It's a bit of a generalization, but I think in general you're going to get something quite nice. But this one's got this lovely kind of dusting of like cocoa powder and the sort of cacao nib cocoa powder notes. So it's a little deeper and a bit richer than just being fruit. And it's like kind of soft, kind of balsa wood, hinoki wood going on. But yeah, we're really happy with this one. There's almost like a herb. There's almost like a herbal note, like reminds me of fennel seeds or caraway seeds. Caraways, I think you get in is it kumul or something like that? It's like it's got caraway, that kind of.
That's a hard one for me to remember how it tastes like, but there is something very herby and very
almost caraways. It's kind of fennelly. It's a bit like fennel seed, but it's a bit more heavy. But yeah, caraway seed. I'm trying to think. So do you remember like Wolfschmidt's kumul? It's like a German liqueur. It's a caraway kind of. Right. But anyway, that's what I find. I find this kind of weird herbal thing going on.
You don't find bottlings of this distillery this old, like 24 years old, that often. I find.
Yeah, I mean there is one broker who's got quite a lot, and so I think you'll see more.
It's just a question of getting onto the market, probably.
Yeah, I think they've got a lot, and they're all quite low strength. I mean, Simon, I think you took this cask in, not this cask, you took a sister cask in yesterday, and you said the bung cloths were like, it was really loose bung, and the cloths were like 4 cloths instead of it just being a nice tight fitting bung.
Yeah, basically, someone at some point had. They didn't have the correct size bung, so instead they just padded it out with bung cloth. So the strength was way down on it just from losses from the cask, from all that air being able to transfer through. But on the flip side of that, we buy the liter of alcohol, and when a cask has had that much evaporation, the flavors become very, very condensed, very intense. It's very so the spirit itself, even though it was 44% ABV cask strength, it was really good. But if the cask had stayed like that with those with the wrong sized bung and all those bung cloths letting air in, it would have been 39-38% in a year or two, and no longer able to be called whiskey. So I think we caught it just in time. And yeah, it was a pretty good find. Are you bottling that soon, Phil?
Yeah, we're going to bottle it in the new year for.
It's totally ready for bottling straight away, no problem.
So this one I feel is, even though it's only 47, it's quite warm. It's warmer than the blended malt, even though the alcohol is lower.
Yeah, it's got a little spices in it, that kind of white pepper spice in the back of the palate.
Yeah, but I was wondering when you were talking, when you select a cask to bottle, do you always try it, the both of you? Do you have to agree to both of you, or is it sometimes Phil, sometimes Simon that chooses? Is that a hard question?
Yeah, no, it's often both of us, and sometimes just Phil. So Phil takes the lead a little bit more on the independent bottlings. So sometimes Phil will just get a sample around my desk and say, "We're bottling this," and I go, "Oh, okay, fine." And on the flip side of that, I take more of a lead on the distillery plant and process. So it was quite a good division of labour, really, within the distillery. So we play to our strengths. But Phil tends to take a bit more of a lead on it. Although I've got a few interesting side projects that I've been pushing through that we'll see in the new year. So a couple of things that you'll never have seen from an independent bottler before.
Okay.
Some rather exciting stuff.
But you can't tell us more about that, probably.
Oh, well, I can't spoil the surprise because I'm having for one of them. I decided to have custom bit of artwork made that's going to take maybe 1.5 months to complete. So that's going to slow it down a little bit, but because it's such a special thing, it needs to be a very special label to go with it. So I'll drop a little hint there. That one is my favorite of the new wave of Japanese distilleries. I don't think any bottlings have made it to Europe or UK normal retail yet. So it may or may not be the first. Well, I'm not. Maybe not, because we slowed ourselves down a little bit in order just to make the label perfect. But that should be fun. And then what else? We've got another little interesting side project on the go as well, but I really can't say a single word about that until. But we'll probably see the first of the series coming out in January if all goes to plan. Should be again something no other independent's done. That should be pretty interesting.
So we're doing a second session in February.
Possibly.
That's cool.
Exciting stuff going on. Plenty of plates spinning at the same time with us.
But it's you bottle whiskey. You did a rum too, I think. A couple rums.
We do a lot of rum. Yeah, we do. We bottle a lot of rum these days. We tend to. Well, my preference is I do like sort of heavy, funky Jamaican rums. Are very open though. We're looking at some stuff from Haiti. I really some Haitian rums, some more rums.
Clarin or Clarin.
Well, no, not Clarin, but I'm not at liberty to say at the moment. But I'd love to bottle some Clarin. I'd love to. So hopefully one day we're now working with a new importer in Italy, just part of Luca Gargano's kind of one of his companies. So I'm hoping one day I can get some access to some very nice, fully tropical matured rums and from him. That would be nice. But we'll see how that relationship develops. I'm sure it'll be fun. But yeah, we bought a lot of rum. We obviously did our Clarendon, Morning Musk 1984, 37-year-old that we did as a collaboration with Emmanuel at the Old Alliance in Singapore. So that was quite a big deal to do that one, which is brilliant liquid. Unfortunately, it was expensive. It just kind of has to be. I didn't really have a choice. Maybe you'll notice from the way we price our liquid, we tend to price our liquid to sell, as opposed to just on the shelf for a long time. With things like the Clarendon, it was maybe just. For me, it was about £100 more than I would have liked to charge, but it was just solely down to the economics of it. It just didn't work otherwise. I think we were at the feeling it was £5.95, and I think I was more comfortable at £4.95. That's as me as an individual, but as a consumer. But unfortunately, just the harsh economics. If you want to bottle some nice stuff like that, then you just charge a lot of money these days. It's really difficult.
Well, we've been getting a lot of support and a lot of guys who are just not necessarily whiskey guys, but they're just solely focused on rum who've been buying our stuff. So because we run our weird little ballot system and people send me lots and lots of emails of pictures of open bottles, a lot of these guys are rum guys sending me pictures of open bottles of rum. And so we make a point of having a little conversation, asking what kind of styles and distilleries they're most interested in. So we're lining up a bunch more rums for early to mid next year, sort of based on the feedback we've been getting from the rum enthusiasts who buy our stuff. So yes, it's been going pretty solid with the rums, and we always did some rums because we really enjoyed them, and then we kind of got our first rums took a very long time to sell, and then they started selling quicker and quicker, and now we're getting quite a good reputation for finding nice rums. So yeah, as long as people are interested in the kind of things that we like, and we'll keep trying to find the kind of stuff that our rum guys like, hopefully it'll keep doing okay.
Yeah, I think it's just following on from what Simon said there about speaking to the guys in the rum community. It's a really good idea to kind of, I suppose it's keeping our finger on the pulse of kind of what people are interested in and what people are looking for. And if you can stay ahead of the curve, then hopefully when the market gets a bit silly for a particular spirit, then you could or distillate.
Stay ahead of the pricing curve.
Stay ahead of,
Yeah.
stay ahead of the price, and thus
Try and find things before they become too popular that they get expensive.
Yeah.
Exactly.
There is one question in the chat here, something completely different. About your whiskey bottling and the labels, what is the difference between distilled in Kleinleach Distillery and distilled in Sutherland?
Well, I think we've only bottled one, which was distilled at Unleash, a 2010 9-year-old, which was in a under the delivery order mentioned it was Kleinleach Distillery, so called it Kleinleach Distillery. Distilled in Sutherland, we probably shouldn't and won't do again. It's maybe a little bit
cheeky.
A little
cheeky,
bit
yeah. That was the word I was thinking of, cheeky.
So nowadays we have very good relationships with a lot of big distillery companies now because we actually are a distillery. So we have to be a little bit more sensitive to some of the other distillery companies and how they may react to things. So we used to be a little bit more outspoken than we are now, and because we're kind of in the industry now, we look at it in a different way. I can still think, there's lots of things that I still think are complete bullshit in the industry, and I'm quite happy to say that. But I have a lot of friends. We work with a lot of distillery companies. We have a lot of guys who have worked for distilleries coming to visit us, which is really cool. So we just have to be a bit more sensitive about what we say in the future on our bottling. So we'll leave it up to the artwork to imply what our spirit is in the future. But I do have a dream of a distilled in Sutherland blended malt, and I'm gonna sometime in my lifetime I will make this happen, where I'm gonna take Kleinleach, Brora, and Dornoch, and I'm gonna blend it, and I want to fully mature it as you make spirit. I want to mature you make Brora, you make Kleinleach, and you make Dornoch, and do a full blended up earth distilled in Sutherland. That's one of my goals, but whether that happens or not, it depends on the Azure one.
Yeah, well, they didn't say no, but I think we need a bit of a longer relationship first.
Yeah.
But plus we were up at Brora the other day, and really cool operation. But they're still kind of fine tuning their styles just now, so they're not letting people really taste the new make they're producing right now, because there's we had some front end hearts straight off the still, and it was pretty good. But that's always the best bit. So they're still tuning in their styles, so probably won't really even have the opportunity until Brora feels they've really nailed what they're aiming for. Yeah. So we'll have to see.
But anyway, if you ever do it, Eric already wants to pre-order. So, but that's probably. And before we go on to the third whiskey, maybe just one more question. You talked about it earlier about the ballot system, and there's lots of expectation, lots of people wanting these bottles. I kind of hinted at it in my introduction. I mean, it's not that easy to get hold of your bottles. How hard is it to manage that?
We designed some custom software and had it built for us. We're not software engineers, but we sort of had a grasp of what was possible and what we wanted. So it's not that hard to manage. Most of the work's done on the day or the day before a ballot draw. So it's really just a case of we've got a dedicated email address, so we'll go through the email address and rate people, improve people's tiering on the ballot system based on their what kind of bottles they're sending us, or if they've sent us pictures of bottles before, open bottles always, of course. And yeah, it's not that hard to manage, to be honest. And it's because it's feast and famine. So we'll do a ballot first for some direct sales, and we run the ballots for 48 hours, and then they all sell out, and then most of them ship out about the same time. So instead of doing a bit all the time, you're doing a few days of really hard work for it, and then the rest of the time we don't have anything left to sell. Maybe there's like the occasional There's the occasional bottling where we have a few spare, we find some warehouse stock, or some bottles of gin. But it means that you kind of compact all your work into a short space of time. So in some ways, it's easier because it's predictable. Because you know that for those 2 days, plus the days packing and shipping, you'll have a lot of work on your hands. So if anything, it's easier because the rest of the time there's only little drips and drabs, occasional gin orders to be shipped off or consolidating, because we'll hold stock for people for a while because the shipping costs the same as for 1 bottle, 6 bottles to say ship in the UK. So we'll hold bottles for people for a while. So there's a little bit of management, more so in the consolidation system. But it's worth the extra work because for us we're taking care of the people who will always be there. Because whiskey's on a bit of a high at the moment, or has been. And who knows what's going to happen next year, the year after. But we want to make sure we take care of the drinkers, especially the enthusiasts, the guys who are opening and sharing bottles. So we take care of them first, and we try and cut out the guys who are never opening our bottles. So if you never open our bottles, you'll find it very hard to get hold of them. Whereas if you always open our bottles, then you can be almost guaranteed to win a ballot. So there's a lot of guys now who, unless the entries go crazy, they're almost guaranteed to win every ballot they enter because they've sent us so many pictures of our open bottles. So yeah, it's a bit of extra work, but it suits us and our philosophy.
But the ballot system, as if I understand correctly, not only management is quite doable, as you said, but it's also a management of expectations on the customer side, because they all want these bottles, of course, but they know that if they open the last one, they will get the new one too.
Yes, it makes it a lot easier, and it doesn't. If you've not been able to get hold of our bottles at all, I mean, you can, because they go to retail as well, and there's quite a lot of our bottles that don't sell for they sell for about the same auctions as they do retail, and that's quite an important side effect as well, because we're taking care of our primary demand, the guys who really, really, really want our bottles. Well, they know that if they really, really, really want our bottles, they just have to send us lots of pictures of open bottles, and they can get more. So these guys who say might have a few pennies and maybe overspend a bit at auction sometimes, well, they're not buying our bottles at auction because they're getting them direct. So it's not only are you cutting out the guys who don't open your bottles, you're also reducing the auction value because you're taking care of the primary demand yourself. So for us, that's quite a good thing. It makes sense for us. It's a weird little system, and it works for us. But you have to be committed to the management of it.
You should probably commercialize the system itself for other independent bottlers.
Well, I've designed a system that would work because it won't upscale so well because you need people managing it. But I have designed a system that would be suitable for larger companies based on a kind of similar philosophy, but more automated, shall we say?
Do you think Macallan would get any emails through if it was only drinker?
Yeah, well, I mean, it might be worth them doing. There's a few companies looking for these kind of solutions, but I'll keep my system designed for a larger company because it's under my hat. So I might try and sell it to one of the big boys one day.
Yeah,
there we go.
Sounds good. Shall we go on to another whiskey?
Sure. So this is a Speyside 1990, 30 years old.
I'll share it. It's this one.
It is here. It's on its way to the Netherlands with Belgian frites. And when I made the label, I was like, I said to the artist, I was like, okay, what do you think? I was like, this is what I think of when I think of Belgium and for food. And I was like, sorry, for the Netherlands, I always think of like frites with mayonnaise. And then I sent it to the importer, and he's like, "That's Belgian."
Yes, I was wanting to talk to you about that because you kind of offend every living Belgian in existence.
I've offended all of the Belgians, and
Yes.
I've offended all of the Dutch as well. So, oh well. I suppose I'm not going to travel anywhere for a while, so they might.
You might forget.
So this is actually 31 years old. So I printed the labels, and then the labels, I signed them off, and then I remembered the cask was already 31. So it is actually 31 years old when we bottled it. I think it turned 31 in August, and we probably bottled in September. So it is on its way to the Netherlands at the moment. It should be released. We're now working with the guys at Whiskey Base, so it's, obviously they're going to distribute in the Netherlands, but also it will end up on for sale on Whiskey Base as well. I think the retail price might be just over 200 euros. I hope, anyway, it should be. So I think it's pretty reasonable for kind of 30-year-old malt. Again, I have no idea as to the source of this liquid. But I'm very happy if you want to start a rumor that it's Macallan. But in all seriousness,
Let's do that.
Yeah. The mayonnaise represents
Macallan and mayonnaise sounds good.
Yeah, it represents the new folio series, this condiment series. Yeah, Chris, I did think it was Glenrothes, to be honest. When I first had it, I was like, oh, this is a very generic, slightly heavier Speyside style. I thought it's quite likely to be Rothes. But again, I have no idea. I genuinely don't know. But that was my inclination that it was Glenrothes.
Yeah, well, that's the thing with buying casks. Sometimes you know exactly what it is, and you're not allowed to use the name. And sometimes you actually don't know the source distillery at all, and your broker or intermediary either can't or won't tell you. So in this situation, we have no idea.
Yeah, it was sold to the company that we bought it from as Speyside Single Malt. So they have no idea as to the source. And it was all blending stock. All of this is blending stock that's made its way out into the market, which is it's pretty amazing. It always amazes me blending stock because I was reading the press release about the new I want to say, is it Ballantine's 51-year-old or something, or is it Ballantine's or one of their brands anyway? And let me just check this so I can confirm that information. And I was like, okay, so they're like, and the youngest cask in this is 1970, and it's full of Longmorn, Strathisla, Glenkeith, and Caperdonech, and the youngest cask is 1970. So I was like, right, so you've just chucked a load of 1960s single malts from amazing distilleries into a blend with some grainy old grain. And it just kind of frustrates me every now and again. I know there's a market for like premium blends. Actually, I don't know if there is still a market for premium blends. I think the whiskey industry convinces itself there's still a market for premium blends by only releasing like 100 or 200 bottles of it. But it's it just kind of frustrates me that like nice whiskey like this at 30 years old was going to get just kind of amalgamated into this kind of messy blend of age. I love blending. I think it's amazing art. So don't get me wrong. I really think blending is an incredible art. I think when it gets to like 51 years old, it's royal salute, 51-year-old. And when it gets to that age, it's like you should really just release it as a single malt, or just like use it as because it costs you nothing to have this malt. So use it as like for tasting stock. Take it to an amazing tasting, give people a brilliant time. But instead, it gets chucked in with a bunch of Cambis and put into a hand-blown glass decanter for like £20,000. It's just very frustrating. But maybe that's the purist in me, and I'm not from a blending background, so I can be.
Yeah. Well, Phil. I mean, it's a little bit like how a lot of car companies, their bread and butter is selling like their standard cars, but in order to kind of raise the brand profile, they'll come out with like limited numbers of like a really sexy over-engineered thing every so often. So these say like Royal Salute 51-year-old plus, the purpose isn't really that in itself. The purpose is probably more to raise the profile of Royal Salute because the whole whiskey industry is built on volume and volume of blends. That's still although the balance has been shifting a little bit. That's still the backbone of the industry. In order for us to have all our nice things, you need people drinking lots and lots of blend all over the world.
Unfortunately, I really agree with you, but I just wish that I could just drink all the 60s Longmorn that's aged 51 years old.
Maybe we should be optimistic and just think that they might have been under 40% and they added some grain to raise it above 40, something like that.
That crossed my mind as well. Yeah, I think a lot of these things end up in glass as well. They end up being put into glass at it could have been like an early 60s vintage that was put into glass, 10 years ago or something like that. But yeah, it's just it's a funny side of the industry. I'm in agreement with Simon. I do think it is to raise the profile, because the bread and butter of a big company like Chivas is blending stock and making sure that they have Royal Salute and Valentine's out there. And if it wasn't for these guys going out there and selling, not just selling their brands in different markets, but selling Scotch whiskey.
The idea of Scotch whiskey.
The idea of Scotch whiskey. There's no place for us or Aston Maurice, or any other small independent bottler that doesn't have a huge marketing budget, because everyone else is doing, these guys are doing the work for us on the primary education of the consumer, the basic education, what is a Scotch whiskey, what is a peated malt, what is, a generic tasting notes of a Speyside malt. So they do all of that work for us. So we are pretty supportive of it. But, as such a small company.
Well, of course, like a bottling like the Royal Salute you're talking about, if they just do a press release, it gets into 100 papers all over the world, so it's just free publicity for all the rest of their brands. So.
Exactly. And how do you distribute 101 bottles anyway?
Yeah.
All over the world. It's being done as, Simon's right, it's being done as a marketing exercise more than it's being done as for the consumers and things.
Maybe going back to the French fries here, I really like this.
Yeah, it's great, very drinkable.
Really nice. Good stuff. And it's just 120 bottles, so this is not a full cask.
No, so what we did with this, we split the cask between California and the Netherlands. So half the cask went to California and half the cask went to the Netherlands. I'm going to see if I can find the label. I'm going to send you the label for the US one because it
should be a Texas flag or something.
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah, no pillowcases in sight. Let me see if I can find it because it's quite funny. It might take me a little bit of time, so just give me a second.
No worries.
Find this thing if I can.
So this will be on sale in the next couple of weeks, probably from Whiskey Base.
Yeah, I had advice. Whiskey Base and some retailers in the Netherlands as well.
Okay.
So we had. We are happy to work with the guys at Whiskey Base because we've known them for years.
Yeah, they're good guys.
Yeah, they're awesome dudes. They really are. I mean, Dirk's. A lot of them were original crowdfunders with us. They were really supportive of Dornoch Distillery and kind of what we were trying to do and achieve and so on. So it's really cool. I'm really happy to have that. So.
There is no distributor in Belgium for these bottles right now. For the Thompson brothers, I think.
We're working with.
Nectar did the gins, I know. But...
Yeah, so we've just actually sent a pallet to the Nectar. So I think we just did an exclusive Isla 1990.
Oh yeah.
Which is all same source as the other stock, which is all from a Southside distillery that has a club called the Friends of. I've just put that Lefroy, that picture into the group chat for you.
Yeah, you should be able to share the screen.
Oh, okay. Sorry, 2 seconds. Let me see.
I made you co-host, so you should be able to share.
You better watch your tabs still.
Yeah, Mr. Hands. Let's do that. Share screen. There we go. Hello, share screen. This one. Share. Okay, here we go. And I'm going to try and zoom out here because
this is the okay.
So this is the American version, exactly the same, but we have the stars.
The flag is different.
Flag is different. There's an easy win for your artist. When your artist is busy,
Cool.
this is what you tend to do. It's slightly different. We've had to. This was not the final copy, but it's slightly different. But the artwork's final, but the text is not final.
And this one is 31 years old, I see.
No, that was an original draft. Okay. That was an original draft. So the text changed after that. That was the first draft.
I think the Americans will be grossed out by the idea of putting mayonnaise on your French fries.
I know. I should have covered it in like very sweet mustard and very sweet ketchup.
There is a specific art to label making.
Our artist is great. Well, we work with a few people, but in general, she's brilliant. Like all artists, they have other projects that keep them busy. But in general, we're really happy with the work. Really comes out very happy. So it's a bit of fun, really. A bit of fun, and that's the way we see whiskey. It should be kind of accessible and fun for people. We're going to move next year. We're going to bring on a back label, a rear label next year, and we want to include a bit more information about the cask variety, the filtration is quite important, I think. Any re-racking, try and bring in some distillation dates. We're gonna look at our rear labels next year and just try and provide more information,
more transparency and info.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Also, I realized at one point, like, we don't even have our website on our labels.
Yeah.
So the stuff like that we need to kind of think about and remember to do.
Well, I mean, do you really need that nowadays, though? When was the last time you typed in a web address and just typed in the?
Put a QR code on then, something like that. But I think we want to have a bit more information on what the liquid is and how we, more importantly, from our perspective as an independent bottler, is how we treated the liquid. What happened to the liquid on arrival with us, because that's really where we kind of take over the custodianship of the liquid. I suppose so. Yeah.
Right. Is there a lot of stuff happening in the warehouse? I mean, like re-racking or finishes or second maturation, stuff like that?
Yeah, there is some, not a huge amount. So we're going to try something out which we haven't done before. Probably next couple of weeks. So we've got some. I suppose there's two industries in Jerez, in Spain. There's one that makes sherry, and there's one that seasons casks. We have some seasoned casks coming to us. And normally, I'm not a big fan of like new make spirit going into these seasoned casks, because I find the balance is off between the wood and the sherry and the spirit. But we're going to try and see how we get on with using them for finishing. Something like a very punchy, big, fatty distillate, like a Ben Rinnes or a Dalyuan or a Cuila or something, and just see how it handles it. And then when the casks are finished, then it's almost perfect for Dornoch spirit. So you've had this edge taken off, this first hit of wood, the hit of sherry taken off and given to a kind of punchy distillate that can take it, and then used for Dornoch. In my mind, that's how we're gonna try and do it.
We've had good results doing that. I guess what we call it the short refill. So we lent a bunch of really good first fill bourbon barrels, as well as US 30 gallon and US 15 gallons, to another independent bottler a good number of years ago, and they used them for finishing. So they put lots of old, 20-year-old this, 18-year-old that into the casks, and that takes the first edge off them. And they were only using them for 6, 7, 8 months. And then when we got them back, that was perfect for us, because that big first woody hit comes out pretty early in the maturation, and it just takes the edge off them, and means that you're getting something close to first fill style, but that's not going to interfere with your spirit character. So I'm big fan of that. We're also lining up quite a few dechar rechars, so we can have that done locally to us, which is good. And the more dechar rechar casks I've had, the more impressed I've been. Where it's just this really good balancing point where, although the wood's been refreshed with the scraping back and the recharring, the flavors that come from that wood are so much more mature and refined than relatively fresh oak or oak that's only been seasoned or kiln seasoned for a little while and then used in the bourbon industry and then moved over here. So I'm a big fan of dechar rechars as well, and everyone we've had, I've really thought that the balance between spirit and cask has been brilliant. So we'll be doing a bit more of that going forward, I think, as well.
Well, everybody's very quiet. There's not many questions coming from the audience, so everything must be very clear.
Oh, well, I did not. I really don't understand a single word we're saying.
Well, they're smiling, so they understood that.
Oh, Ian, do you recognize my map behind me? That is a bit of Orkney, Shappensea in there. It's our Orkney map representing.
Nice.
Yeah. 2016. Last time I was in Orkney, 2016. Seems like a long time ago.
Everything seems like a long time ago to me.
Yeah, indeed. The only good thing about the past few years is that our whiskies carry on maturing. So
yeah,
that's the one good thing that we've achieved from COVID, I suppose. No distractions. Cool.
Should we go on to the Glenkeith?
Yeah. Let's have some Glenkeith. I haven't had this in a while, the Glenkeith.
Put up the label for everybody to see because this is one of the best labels from the set I've got here, I think.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Sputnik probe Glenkeith.
So just the ideas for the labels. Do you give a briefing to the artists? Do you say like we want this, or do they come up with ideas themselves, or how does it work?
It's a bit of a mix. So sometimes I will give her like, oh, I think this would be cool, and I think this would be cool. But what I tend to do is write her an email and say, for example, we're bottling Glenkeith. Here's some things you can look at. So we looked at some stuff in the church, the connections from the church to sort of these Irish monks that came over onto the west coast of Scotland. So you had some Celtic kind of old imagery of kind of these Celtic connections between the church and Keith and the west coast of Scotland. And then obviously we came up with the date of the founding of Glenkeith Distillery, and then we were like, okay, what cool things happened in that year? And I have to say the Glenkeith was like the one that we had the least amount of fun designing, because it was like, it's quite a boring distillery. It's like Keith's not the most exciting place, and it's not the most exciting distillery. So we did. She came up with the Sputnik label, which I really love. Or is it Sputnik? So the probe. What was the probe called? Simon's sort of thing. You would know.
Oh, you mean it's Sputnik. It is Sputnik, launched 1957.
57, yeah, it is Sputnik. Sputnik 1. So that was the best. This is the best we could come up with for the label.
I was thinking War of the Worlds when I saw it.
Yeah, it does have a bit of the War of the Worlds vibe about it. Yeah. A pretty cool thing to do. So yeah, we're quite a big fan.
I don't think you said though, but it's just because 1957 was the same year that Glenkeith was founded and Sputnik 1 was launched.
Correct.
Anyway, very cool label.
Cool,
and a 20-year-old Glenkeith we have in the glass now, so quite some age to it.
It also leaves it open if we ever do like a really young Glenkeith in the next few years, we can put Jeff Bezos on the label.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if it's if we get some like 2020 Glenkeith spirit.
This could be your space series.
Each vintage. It's really good. I like Glenkeith a lot. It's nice and fruity, pretty easygoing kind of stuff. This is a vatting of 2 Well, allegedly 2 first fill bourbon barrels. I'm not sure if they are first fill bourbon barrels or whether they were just fairly active bourbon barrels. I'm not quite sure, but they were certainly sold as first fill barrels. But I wouldn't say they were first fill. Who knows? But it's just a nice, well-rounded Speyside malt. Impressed by Glenkeith in general. So yeah, it's good. Again, we vatted these. We kind of found balance with vatting them, and it allowed all of our importers to be able to get stock as well, which is quite important to us to make sure it can be distributed quite well.
It's at 46.2%, I see. So this is cask strength? Or?
Yeah, well, it's just below cask strength. As Simon said, labeling strength. It's probably how we should word it more than cask strength. Yeah, it was a naturally low strength in this guy. I'm going to see if I can find the original paperwork, but yeah, it was low, which is maybe part of the reason I didn't leave it until it was 30. Also, we can't really afford to sit on very expensive casks for 18, 20 months.
Sure.
When we spend £1,200 a ton on barley, it's that's our priority, is buying barley. So.
Usually, independent distillers have their pet distilleries that they really love to bottle. Do you have distilleries like that?
Well, yes and no. I mean, we've done a hell of a lot of these Isla 89, 90s, 91s from the same source. That's probably been my most recent favourite, but it's just because we had access to the stock. I mean, I would love to. I mean, like all independent bottlers, I would love to just bottle like Bowmore and Springbank and Clynleash and the occasional Highland Park and the occasional Old Pulteney and just kind of like cool things like that. But these are like the ones that cost a fortune. We see priceless now. We're working out how much is it going to cost. How much is it going to cost to eventually get bottled and reach the consumer. You're looking at like Bowmore 2002, and it's like £600 a bottle, and you're like, who buys that? Who's going to buy that cask?
Who buys it and drinks it?
Yeah, I mean, even then, I think trying to sell something like that for like £500-600 a bottle, it's really difficult. It's really, really difficult. But whether they're being held by investors for long term gain, I don't know. But it's a bit of a funny market. I think Bert probably sees a lot of the lists that we see with some of these crazy prices on them. It's just some of them are mental. Some of them are utterly crazy. Yeah.
It's maybe another reason why these things end up in Royal Salute. Because it's just too expensive.
I'm not sure that these prices are being driven by the big distillery companies. I think they're being driven by casks that have kind of made it out into the market 10, 12, 14 years ago, and they're now starting to come onto the market again, but they're asking very much high 2021 prices. I'm not sure so many of these sort of things are being trickled out from the bigger companies, although they might be. They might be a bigger distillery company might be looking at their stock, their inventory of Lafroig for blending, and going, well, in fact, we can get £120 an hour lay or £200 an hour lay for this, when in fact we were just going to use it as filler in the blend. Probably some does make out from the distillery companies, but I'm not sure how they, how sustainable it is really, the way the prices are. I suppose it depends on what the consumer threshold is on these sorts of bottles. It's a pretty
I mean, at the end of the day, someone has to buy it and drink it.
Yeah. I always say at the end of the day, somebody has to put it into glass, as in a bottler has to take the cask, get it into glass, get it to market, get it sold, and then for them to actually realise the value of what, or to realise the price they're asking for it. And as Simon says, the consumer has to be willing to actually buy it. So not a lot of people have £500 to drop on a bottle of almost 20-year-old Bowmore from an independent bottler.
Yeah.
It's even if an official bottle of Bowmore came out at that price, you'd be like, "Oh, are you sure about that, Bowmore? You sure that was a good idea to release it at that price?"
You can get an entire lineup for a tasting from Thompson Brothers with
Yeah,
that money.
maybe not
So-
for much longer. Who knows?
No, I know.
Sorry, I can't taste it.
Yeah. This is also really nice. Ian says, "Love the nose."
Yeah, it's nice. It's a little chalky, kind of chalky note to it.
Yeah.
Simon, what did you just open there? I saw you open a bottle. What's that?
Oh, I've been sitting at my table here, so the illegal whiskey matured in chestnut wood, and it's quite a surprise, really, because it's really nice. Yeah, I wasn't sure what to expect. I haven't tried a whiskey that was fully matured in chestnut wood before, and yeah, it's quite a surprise. Yeah, bit of a strange story because obviously it doesn't say the distillery on it, but Strathern put a few things into chestnut wood, I seem to remember, and then it couldn't be bought. It couldn't be called whiskey if it was bought in Scotland because you're not allowed to use strange cask types except for mezcal casks. But you can't use wood that's not oak.
Very
So
traditional mezcal casks.
yeah,
Yes.
All the crofters have next to their illicit stills.
Barns full of mezcal casks.
Yeah, we just all littered all over the hills of Scotland.
yeah, so in this situation, they actually transported the cask to England, and they had it bottled in England, where they don't have the Scotch whisky regulations, and technically, legally, they're allowed to call it whiskey. They and not put Scotch or distilled in Scotland, and there's not even a distillery name on it. But it's actually really good, and I'm very surprised because, quite frankly, I was not expecting it to be very, very pleasant at all. And it's the chestnut wood's giving a really nice effect. And yeah, I'd recommend giving that a shot. Really, it's
It's fun tasting that kind of stuff. I've had some Irish whiskies on Amburana wood, like the Brazil hardwood, and some cherry wood too. Tilling.
Yeah, Umbra, and I'm sure
They had some cherry wood too, and some acacia. I think they used too.
Yeah, we've got some Japanese cherrywood Sakura casks in our warehouse, and obviously you can never call the contents whiskey, but they're looking quite interesting. But the casks are the cask influence is very slow on those, so it's probably the kind of thing that's going to be amazing after 15, 20 years. So at some point in the very, very distant future, you'll have Dornoch Distillery. Not allowed to call it whiskey because it's it would have to be labeled. Well, yeah, it would have to be labeled as a spirit drink, like 15-year-old spirit drink matured in a Sakura cask. And one day that'll come.
Oh.
The casks are so slow that it's going to be a long-term maturation.
I'll echo Eric from earlier and say I'll pre-order one because I'd really like to try that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah, I'm excited to get those to market. It'll be fun. It'll be really good fun.
Yeah.
Maybe since we're already talking about your own distillery and your own distillates, maybe we should try some of that.
Yeah. What's the cask number that you have?
I'll put it up on the screen for you. It is this one.
Cask number X Imperial Barrel.
Yes.
Oh, that's
30-year-old Imperial Barrel. Let me.
Have you got a cask number there, Phil?
It's not on the label.
I did give Vary the cask number, but I don't.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Yeah, you've got two casks in X Imperial 1990 barrels. You got cask number 304 and 305.
I think this was 305. It might say if there's a sample being taken on the record.
I'll go to the, I'm on it.
I'll just write it on the label by hand so I remember.
Yeah. Did you do well, Phil? Someone hasn't written down the on my cask sheet that a sample was taken. Okay. Yeah, it's one of those two. It's the same. Well, let's see. Yeah. What's the date? Is it the 2nd of July?
July.
Yes.
Or the 7th of July?
No, it's the 2nd.
Okay, it's cask 304 then.
304.
Okay, so yeah, 20. Oh, it's young stuff, 2020.
Yeah.
Nice.
The reason I did this is because I had a sample with somebody who came to the distillery recently, and I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was really fruity, and I also wanted to showcase this kind of more modern style of Dornoch that we're kind of making at the moment, the sort of bright, fruity, almost tropical style. So, yeah. What do you want to say about that, Si? Maris Otter.
Yeah, let's see what we did there. Yeah, Maris also from barley. I'll have to check back on the mash and fermentation sheets. So 3, 4, 3, 5.
So yeah, this would have been probably at this point in time would be a cold pitch of liquid brewer's yeast. Maris Otter floor malted. Of course, floor malted was the barley we used, and would have been pitched into. We only have wooden washbacks. They're all open top. The mash would have been about 250 kilo mash with Maris Otter. And then we draw off from that 250 kilo mash into 2 washbacks, into Eastern European oak washbacks, which are never fully cleaned. They're always left. I mean, they are cleaned, but they're never like steam cleaned or chemical cleaned. So they have plenty of lactic acid bacteria hanging around.
Some life into them.
Loads of life.
Yeah. That's spent brewer's yeast from one of our local breweries. So we use spent brewer's yeast from Cromarty quite a lot because they use Cromarty Brewery. They use an old Scottish brewer's strain that used to be used at a number of distilleries in the 1960s as one of their house strains. So we quite like using spent brewer's yeast I think we're. Well, do Ben Nevis, do they still use spent brewer's yeast? I think it's maybe just us and Ben Nevis, really.
Can't say for certain. The Springbank not pitch? No, they use distillers yeast, don't they?
Yeah, they use. Yeah,
Ben
I think so.
Not Ben Reef, Ben Romick.
Ben Romick have done some batches with spent brewer's yeast in recent years, but only a few as kind of a plaything. They haven't really. It's not part of their core recipe.
I see. Just before we talk on, maybe it's interesting also to you guys that every puts their tasting notes in the chat, so we can see lots of reactions on this because this is your own spirit. So probably nice to hear some feedback on it, right?
Oh, absolutely.
It's worth noting that this cask was a refill cask in 1990. So it was refill cask in 1990, left for 30 years with Imperial in it. So it was, you have a nice fruity previous distillate, but you haven't got a lot of wood character on the go there. So, yeah, interested to see what people think of it.
So you were talking about the brewer's yeast. So what is the advantage of you using that yeast, or what is the difference between that yeast and distiller's yeast?
Well, there's lots of disadvantages for sure.
Okay.
So the disadvantages is that you get a much lower yield with brewer's yeast, and then with spent brewer's yeast, there's also greater inconsistency because it becomes spent once it's gone through a number of fermentation cycles at a brewery, and every brewery is different as to how they reuse their yeast. So some of them will have a set rule, after 6 or 7 repitches, then they'll dump their yeast and start fresh again, or some of them will just keep on reusing until there's a flavor drift or a performance drift, at which point they'll dump the yeast. So we get at that back end of the cycle. So at the point where there's either been performance or flavor drift, which gives us a lot of inconsistency because there's been a lot of mutation from the original strain before it reaches us. So we like inconsistency, we like variation, and just to see what kind of interesting things happen. There's also a greater range of. Ooh, my lights just flickered here. It's pretty stormy in Scotland at the moment, so we might get a power cut, which will be fun. Yeah, so there's a lot more variation of flavour in brewer's yeast, and that's because distillers' yeast have all kind of gone down the same path or similar path. So there's only really a handful of commonly used distillers' yeast, and they all have kind of similar flavour profiles. And part of the reason for that is some flavours are yield expensive and some flavours are yield cheap. Not saying that they're good or bad, but decisions have been made in terms of finding a balance between flavour and performance. So we go about things by completely ignoring, not completely ignoring, but we don't pay too much attention to performance, yield, cost of production, and instead just to see what kind of flavors we can create. So yeah, those are the main things, but it gives you a much wider palette of potential flavors by utilizing brewer's yeast. There's also some interesting advantages to using spent brewer's yeast as well, because I don't want to give away, because I've kind of figured out the pathways as to where some flavors are derived, but I don't really want to give away any particular trade secrets. If people think about it long enough, they could probably figure some of it out. But there's some very interesting things that happen when, well, think of it this way. Think of what the logistics of yeast were like in the early 1900s or the 1920s or the 1960s, when you had the majority of distilleries relying on spent brewer's yeast. Sometimes that spent brewer's yeast was traveling some quite long distances on rather slow transportation without refrigeration, and then stored at the distillery without refrigeration. And have a think about how that would affect the yeast. Now, most people who do a bit of brewing go, well, it's going to be terrible for the yeast. But what are the byproducts of that drop in performance? What are the byproducts of those stresses on the yeast, and what kind of flavors can you get from that? So we do kind of reverse engineer some of those old logistics chains, because there's certain flavors which are only possible because of those old, not just the materials, the old barley varieties, the old yeast varieties, the spent brewer's yeast, but also in the method and in the logistics of those. So I think I've said enough that someone could probably figure out what's going on if they really wanted to.
Maybe I don't know if this is a cheeky question or not, but you're talking about variance in flavors that you cannot really control during the fermentation. Does that also mean that the spirit that runs off your stills is different every time?
Yep, always different.
Yeah.
Always different. I mean, we can do recipes within a ballpark style. There's always certain themes that run through our spirit, but there's also variation. So there's not a level of precision where today's, and if anything, it's the opposite, where we actively encourage that variation. So for example, the cut points when we're doing this the spirit run, they're done by our nose, our taste, and our judgment. Now, there's 4 different people who can do a spirit run, and they all have slightly different preferences and characters. So you would find, say, one distiller might play it a little bit safer and give you a little bit more of a kind of a narrower, cleaner cut. And then maybe another one might be a bit more aggressive on the front end to really, living dangerously, but accentuating some of the more volatile flavors and some of the higher fruity levels.
Yeah.
So we leave it to everyone's judgment, and we like it that way.
Yeah.
Because I think in the future maybe someone can tell the difference between
Who did distillation?
a spirit that was distilled by me or by Philip or by Jacob or by Ewan, and we all have slightly different preferences.
Do you keep track of that also? Which cask is filled with whose spirit?
Yeah, we've got endless spreadsheets.
Wow, cool.
Although actually on this, I don't actually keep track of who did the spirit run for each spread on the spreadsheet, but it's on the original. Yeah, it's on the original paper returns, but we don't actually fill that into our spreadsheets at the moment. So we'd have to go and look it up in a mountain of paperwork.
Yeah. So maybe if you're thinking in the long run, in like 10 years' time, I don't know if it's the idea to once do a core range bottling, like a 10-year-old Dornoch bottling. Will this make it hard to do that, to achieve some kind of consistency in like a core range bottling?
Oh, no, I don't think we're ever going to aim for consistency here. At least not our current distillery. So it's to be honest, it's probably going to be single casks all the way down.
Okay.
From Dornoch Distillery, probably. I mean, maybe we might play with things and mix the casks here or there, but to be honest, a strange thing happened to me in a warehouse a couple of days ago. I took a cask sample. It would have been about 3.5 years old, and it's the first time I've taken a cask sample that I didn't love. So I think in terms of being capable of putting out everything we do as a single cask, barring that single cask I found a few days ago, I've not found a single cask that I did not love. And to be honest, I took a little sample bottle and I left it on Phil's desk for him to try blind without influence, and he liked it. I was just, for me, it wasn't.
Did you check who did the spirit run on that one?
I did not check. But there was something particularly experimental with that cask, and I think that's where the failure for me was. But Phil quite liked it, and Phil has a very good Phil's a very good palate. But I think for me, maybe I was confusing the process, because there was an unusual process involved with that one. Nothing illegal on the Scotch whisky regulations or anything. But we're playing. It was our first attempt at playing at something new, and I don't think it. At least you never know. Maybe leave it in cask for another 10 years and see what happens. But at this point, at 3 years old, it's the first time I've not been happy with any spirit that we've made. So I think that bodes well for the vast majority of our casks should be acceptable as standalone single casks. When we build in enough intensity of flavour, we take individual care on each distillation. You've got a human being there making those decisions based on their nose, based on their palate. So it's kind of hard to go wrong, because it's like internal quality control at the point of distillation, because there's that variation in flavors from each fermentation. If you start to drift into something that starts getting a little bit more, say, vegetable, you cut. If you start finding just the beginnings of an off note, you cut. You've got a person making that decision. It's not done by a rule. If it's always at this strength, or once it passes the demisting test, you take it. It's always done by a sense of taste and smell. So you've got that internal quality control at the point of distillation. So even if you've done something really weird with your fermentation and some unusual flavors have come through, you've got someone making a decision as to where to begin and where to end. So hopefully all our single casks are reasonably good enough. I'm quite yeah, I'm fairly confident it's all going to be acceptable.
Well, I think there's not many notes appearing in the chat, but Ian says he can't do notes, but he just makes him excited about getting more bottles in the future. So, and I think I can echo that because this is really interesting stuff. I mean, it is of course 62.6%, so it's quite high on alcohol.
And unfortunately, I don't have like a sample of that in front of me. But with it being a very old refill cask, the cask influence should be fairly minimal. So it's a good way to show off our naked spirit.
Yeah. I get the feeling that when you're talking about is a whiskey spirit driven or cask driven, you're more about spirit driven.
Well, I mean, it depends how much flavour your spirit is as to where you fall on that line, really. So, so we try and put as much. We really try to concentrate on spirit flavour. So, the majority of our casks filled at Dornoch are refill. So, excluding the first year's production and the crowdfunders cask, which was first year production was majority. Either first fill bourbon barrel octaves for the crowdfunders, and then our own production in the first year mostly went into ancient Solera casks, which would be for very long-term maturation or reasonably long-term maturation. And then after that, we started heavily favouring refill casks to show off our spirit more. Without it being overwhelmed by the wood. Although the density and body of our spirit means it's actually standing up really well with these, even these little first fill bourbon barrels at 3 and 4 years old are looking really good. Although I think we'll see a lot of them being released over the next couple of years because I think kind of 5, 6-ish years is probably about the maximum you want to keep maturing those smaller bourbon barrels. We got a bunch of first fill octaves recently from a distillery, so new making them since birth, and they're all about the 7 or the 8-year-old mark, and the wood influence is very heavy on those. Combined with the kind of increased oxidation. And I was tasting those, going right. We probably shouldn't leave our octaves. Kind of 7-8 years is sort of maximum that they should be left for. And obviously, there's a lot of those are private casks as well from our crowdfunders. So I think we'll be encouraging them to be bottling them at that kind of 4 or 5 year mark should be optimal. Certainly, all the ones at 4 years old are looking really good. So you'll probably see quite a bit of. I say quite a bit. You'll probably see a reasonable amount of Dornoch releases, but not necessarily our own releases. But the private casks. So they'll find their way out and about into the wild. And if they go to retail, we've got some rules in terms of pricing as well. So, I say rules. It's up to them. It's their casks. If they want to charge a silly amount for a bottling in a shop, that's their business. But if they do that, they lose all ballot privileges.
I was going to say that. Yeah.
So then they lose easy access to future bottles. So if they take the piss on pricing, that's their business.
And it's just a once-off thing then for them.
Yeah. Well, that's it. And if someone wants to do that, then then there's no hard feelings at all because they really helped us out in the early days. But if they're going to go a bit wild on pricing, then they're just not going to get any other releases from us, or at least not easily. Whereas if they put it out within and I say a fair price, so I put the marker at they can't charge more than 150% of our maximum. So that still gives a big chunky meat on the bone. it's a high, that's potentially a high, so our first release was 95. So then if someone had put out a cask just now, the maximum price would be like £142-ish.
Yeah.
So it's high, but it's not stupid.
Yeah.
We're someone putting a big chunk of meat on the bone, but without getting into kind of fairy tale territory. So I think that's perfectly fair. If someone wants to make a good big profit on it, cool, but not
Silly.
not be stupid. Yeah.
Are there any more crowdfunding plans in the future, or is that was that just to launch the distillery?
Probably not. We did a second round a couple of years ago, and that helped pay for our new warehouses, and allowed us to take the independent bottling operation in house as well. So we did some casks for that as well. I don't think we're ever going to do any more. Certainly, the two times we did it before, it was kind of it wasn't a necessity. We could have found money through other means, but it was very important for us to
build a community.
To get people involved. I don't think we'd do it again though. It's a tricky one. It's really down to the eventual management of it and the necessity. So I don't think so. But we are planning on building a bigger distillery. But it's we've kind of tiered our preferences for additional funding, and kind of cask sales are lower down on that list. So if we get like 80% of the way through building a new distillery, and we find ourselves a few pounds short, then we may well do some cask sales, but it's not our number one option. So we'll see how that goes, but I don't think so.
I still have my crowdfunding bottle here. I haven't opened it yet, but I'm waiting for a good tasting to share it out with some people.
Well, the so-called golden cork has never been claimed. So
it's behind my green key now, so I can't really reach out and open it now. But
that would be funny if it was. But somewhere out there, one of those bottles, has a golden cork. It's not actually golden. I just used a fine point Sharpie to write a code and my email address on it. And if you find that, then there is a octave that was filled, I think the same month we released the whiskey, maybe a little bit earlier. So then you get a free cask from the Dornoch Distillery if you show us that cork. And it's never been claimed, so it's still out there somewhere.
I'll probably be mailing you in a couple of weeks about that.
Yeah, well, you never know, because there's quite a lot have been opened as well. I remember kind of a big fun. It was not long after we posted the first release out to everyone, and we had a big tasting, and lots of our friends were there, and a lot of the people opened the bottle during that tasting, and I've seen and through our emails as well, we've seen quite a lot of people send us pictures of it open. And in some countries, for example, in Japan, almost 100% of the allocation of the first release went to whiskey bars. None of it went to retail, and almost every single bottle went to a whiskey bar. So I hope some like a Japanese barman's not noticed it and wondered why there was like writing on top of his
and threw it away.
Yeah,
this cork is off.
Yeah. Well, you never. I mean, it could have happened. It could have happened. But if I find an email address on my cork written in Sharpie, I'd probably send an email.
Yeah, probably. But Ian hasn't opened his one yet, so it's still 50-50 on the both of us.
I'm pretty sure it was. I'm pretty sure it was UK stock. It's all I
okay, so it's probably Ian then.
Well, no, because yours was technically, if you're a crowdfunder, it's technically UK stock as well. So.
Yeah.
Well, Phil thinks it's in the Phil thinks it's probably in UK/crowdfunder stock, but basically one with a tax stamp on it. But I mixed it in so that I wouldn't know where it was. But Phil kind of kept half an eye on the area, so he thinks it probably went to either a crowdfunder or UK retail, but we're not sure.
The future will tell.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a time limit on it because I think in the deal we said when that cask turns 3, if it's not claimed, then Dornoch Distillery keeps it.
Okay. Cool, guys. This is good stuff to taste. It's really nice. I think I did a post on it on Facebook because it's also bottle 1 of 1. I like opening bottles that say 1 of 1. This is good to have to be able to share with these guys. So thank you for including this in the tasting.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate that.
Yeah.
No, we're happy with this. When it's things like tastings, we're more than happy to send cask samples, and I think it's interesting. It gives a little bit of something to talk about.
Phil, are you more than happy to go and dig them out from the warehouse? I
didn't dig this one out. That is correct. But in general, we do pay people to do this for us. No, we don't really. No, it normally ends up being Simon, I've dug out a few samples in my day, Simon. I know my way around the warehouse. Don't worry.
All right.
Some brotherly love going on there.
Well, it's just if he's saying we're happy to send out cask samples, then he'll have to be the one going into the warehouse to get them.
Yeah. I think it's good. It's great for I was talking to my partner about this earlier, that these sorts of tastings are really great for us because it allows us just to kind of chat to whiskey people and not have to. We don't have a marketing budget or anything like that, so it's nice to just kind of speak directly to the end consumer and kind of tell them, talk to them about what we're all about and answer questions and stuff like that. So, it's really great for us to do that.
And Phil can show off his cat as well.
Yeah,
I know. She's normally makes her way onto the camera, but she's been quite aloof tonight.
We've heard her, so that's good too.
Oh, she's loud. She's so loud, that cat. It's usually at 2:00 in the morning. You don't want to hear it. Yeah. Shall we
move on to some peaty? Some peatiness? Let's go for the Kalila.
Yeah, let's do that.
I'll show the label on the screen so everybody knows how beautiful the bottle is. Again, I had a really Japanese feeling about this label.
Yeah. So this is the Kalila. I'm glad it was this one because I was looking through the emails, like 54.8. Okay, that's weird. Why did I send this? But yeah, this is the one we did for Nichols and Parks, which is a really great shop in a place called Stourbridge, which is a nice little town near Birmingham, and probably about the best thing near Birmingham and in Birmingham. But it's they're really cool people. So this is a 2010 full maturation in D-char rechar wood. Simon was talking about D-char rechar earlier. This is a D-char rechar wine cask, and the reason I know that is because whether the whiskey was matured in a wine cask and then it was D-char rechar, I'm not sure, because Diageo don't really disclose these things, but it's certainly a D-char rechar wine cask, South African wine cask. So as Simon was talking about earlier, what they do is they scrape the inside, they then re-toast it and they re-char it to kind of get into those extra layers of the wood. And I think it's worked particularly well for kind of mid-term maturation. So you're getting enough wood character without it being kind of too dominant. You don't get that dominant bourbon character. Like in the first one we tasted was kind of very bourbony, whereas this is like balanced wood with spirit, quite integrated. I was quite impressed by this liquid. So 11 years, D-char rechar, 2010 vintage, 54.8% alcohol, exclusive for Nichols and Parks. I think this was around about £60-65, or at least
very affordable. I mean, for a Kalila nowadays on cask strength or in this amount of ABV, that's pretty good on the price.
I think so. We just try and keep it as often when I price things, I think about what I would pay, and like I'm right. Okay, what would I pay as a stingy Scotsman?
Mhm.
And if I'm a stingy Scotsman, and I'm happy at 65 quid, then the guy who's a doctor in Sweden is going to be very happy at that price.
Yeah. Go buy a
Um,
case.
yeah, exactly. So that's kind of one of our ways of looking at pricing is compared to what everyone else charges for similar products. I think that's really important. Is we tend to look at what everyone else is charging, and if we can charge less, then we'll try and do that. Generally, that's kind of our way of thinking on that. Is just try and make it as fair as possible in the pricing. But I think we hit the mark all right with quality and price on this one.
Yeah, certainly for our UK recommended retail prices, the prices we send off to the importers. One of the first things we do is we'll have a scan through bottlings in the last couple of years, and we'll try and come in at the lower end if we can of of what, say, a 92 Glenkeith goes for, or what Kalila 14-year-old goes for. We're always trying to come in on the lower range of what people have been doing as well. So we like to be knowledgeable of the kind of the market. And if we see a bottling from last year still sitting on the shelf at a price, we go, well, that's the wrong price. That's been in that shelf for a year without people clearing out. So we want to price it to sell out, which is good for us because what we like to do is we like to sell out, and then that, rather than trying to hold out for more money, we'd rather sell out fast, and then let's go buy another cask and sell that out fast, and then let's go buy another cask and sell that out fast. So someone who overprices probably makes less money while the stock's sitting there waiting for that price to be achieved. Whereas if we price it to sell out, we get our money back, and we can go and buy another barrel.
You can play more.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. We can be more fair with our pricing. We can be more reasonable with it.
Mhm.
And because we've got our own bottling facility, warehousing facility, and we're actually just about to pick up a bigger van for doing our own bonded transportation. That's been a bit of a problem recently. There's been a bit of a shortage of drivers in Scotland, and bonded movements of casks is got more expensive and longer wait times, and so we'll have our new bigger van next week, and we can start doing our own bigger, do more meaningful bonded transportations ourselves. So it makes us even more fast and even more nimble, and it also makes it easier for other companies to deal with us, because we have, if they're selling to someone else, they might want those casks moved, and that person then has to find a warehouse that will accept 10, 20, 30 casks, which can be a problem at the moment. There's a shortage of warehousing space, whereas we're like, yeah, no problem. We can take them, we can receive them at our warehouse, we can arrange the logistics and transportation as quickly as possible. So we try to make ourselves very easy to deal with. And also but some of the bigger distillery companies as well, they're becoming a little bit wary of the cask market, such as casks going to investment groups. So they're very wary of dealing with some people if there's suspicion that these casks are going to end up in an investment portfolio. Even
instead of in bottles.
Yeah, I mean, the guys who are like the brokers for some of the big companies, they want their liquid to go out and into bottle. They really don't want to see their casks being used as an investment vehicle, and they're very wary of that whole thing. So, we don't broker casks; we only buy and bottle casks. So, all these things kind of add up to make us kind of easier and safer to deal with. and more trusted, which it's been a big advantage for us in finding good sources to get good casks from.
It's all about building relationships, I guess, to do future trading with and future business with.
Yeah. So, Phil, is that your way? Is it?
No, I was saying goodnight to Evelyn.
Yeah,
Oh,
Evelyn
okay.
is leaving us. Our only lady in the tasting is leaving us. So.
Oh, good night.
But I think I'm going to echo some things in the chat here about the Kalila. It's very fruity, a bit of sweet, some oiliness. It always amazes me how many different kinds of Kalila you can find. Last week I had one which was really dirty and very peaty and very heavy, and this one is really light. So it's really good stuff. This too.
Yeah, I was super happy with this. Super happy.
Yeah.
I think we have some sister casks as well, so there will be more. Again,
Yeah,
DCR.
was Fiddler's Cask, was that a sister of this batch?
Yeah, the cask for Fiddlers was a sister of this batch, but it was this was the only one that was a DCR Reachar wine cask. The rest were DCR Reachar hoggies. So maybe this has just added to the sweetness a little bit. I don't remember the Fiddler's one being that sweet.
Since we're talking about bars, do you still are handling the bar too, the Dornoch Castle bar?
We help a little bit with sourcing of the bottles, but in general, after the sourcing, we can't really get too involved. Okay. I mean, our lives, Simon's a full-time dad and he works full-time. I'm obviously a full-time father to my cat. It's really, but no, we're incredibly busy.
So it's full-time, the distillery and the bottling business.
Yeah, it's more than full-time. It really is. It's great, and we've obviously, I think Simon touched upon it earlier, is we're making plans for a bigger facility, bigger plants, larger warehousing. So that's also now taken over our time. So we were already very busy, and now we're starting to do that. So the bar is definitely, I still have my love for hospitality, and certainly that side of hospitality, the bar. I love bars. I love supporting good bars and helping them get stock and things. It's really important. But with our own bar, I only help them with the sourcing now, and that's it. But it's actually over the past couple of years, we've really not opened that many unique bottles. There's been no demand for opening. We've got like Talisker 57 on the bar. Normally it would just disappear, but this year everything's been really slow. So we're not jumping to open loads of rare bottles. There's no point in opening loads of bottles at £500, £1,000. It's just not worth it.
Yeah, so we keep quite a big stockpile of sexy old bottles. So both me and Phil have been collecting quite a long time, with a focus on good old drinking things. So we've got a stockpile that we kind of keep to one side for opening in the future. For a future bar drinking juice. And then even stuff like this weird thing I opened tonight, I'll take this back to the distillery, let all the staff try it, and then I'll go and put it on the bar. Last week I opened Kanasuke's first release, and then just put it on the bar the other day after all the staff had a try of it. So we're still doing a lot of stuff like that. We're finding weird and hard to get hold of bottles that we want to taste ourselves, and then we'll drop them in the bar. So we're helping a little bit with the stock management, I guess, of like more rare and unusual bottles. We don't really have much to do with the day-to-day running, except for going in and helping ourselves to the espresso machine.
Yeah, that's important stuff.
Yeah, very important.
How many people are involved in Dornoch Distillery at the moment? How many people are working?
Are we 7 people, Simon, are we?
Yeah, 7 people.
7 people with us, and obviously work with an artist separately. She's on a retainer, but it's growing. It's grown by 2 in the past year, so which is quite positive.
Well, we also need like Phil said, we're building a new distillery and quite a big chunk of warehousing, new bottling hall. We're in the early stages. We're submitting for pre-planning approval. We've got land, and so that project's takes a bit of time. So so the extra staff kind of helps to free us up, and I'm working through a lot of the design, plant process engineering. Phil's working through some of the building related stuff, a lot of the finances for it as well. Plus there's all the kind of business plans you have to do, and there's a lot of stuff. We're building a bigger Dornoch distillery, very close to Dornoch Distillery, but I don't even know what we're going to call it, because it's you can't have two Dornoch distilleries. It's not like you can't have Clynelish A, Clynelish B. So we'll have to figure out what we're going to do there in terms of naming the distillery. It's very close by, but we'll figure that one out before we start production.
Yeah, I hope so. So, guys, maybe that's a good thing to go on for kind of the end of the tasting. If there's any more questions, guys, this is the moment to ask Phil and Simon. Maybe just the next year, the next couple of years. What are the big plans? Where are we going with Dornoch? For the things that you've already told, obviously.
I think just continue on the path we're on at the moment. Expand, increase the bottlings, try and maintain the quality, assuming we can maintain the quality. And obviously, as Simon's mentioned, we're planning a big expansion. Big by Dornoch terms is going from 12,000 LPA to 150,000 LPA. So it's still tiny in whiskey terms, but I think it's really important that we, as human beings, and our staff as human beings, find balance in our work and in our lives. And at the end of the day, we don't need 300, 400, 500 RLA production. We will be quite comfortable at 150. So that's really the big thing for us. And then continue the independent bottling. I've got a few ideas. I'm looking at constructing a blended malt. I'm looking at constructing a blend. We've got some ideas for some projects that definitely won't happen until we have bigger warehousing. So I've got some ideas of things I really want to do, but I just can't until we get bigger warehousing. Yep. We want to continue our collaborations, so our Arden American collaboration.
There was a question about that in the chat. I guess you saw that.
Oh right, yeah. So I do now. I can talk a little bit about that. So basically, the idea with the Arden American project was based around blended at birth. That was the whole idea. Was blended at birth, and that comes from, in my mind, it comes from the old Lochside single grain, single malt blended at birth thing that they used to do, and then they used to do it at Ben Nevis as well. So they make this blending stock that was already, grain and malt, and they blend it at birth. And I always loved the idea of how two spirits would, two spirits that if you blended them after 10 years old, they're two distinctly different things. But what happened if you combined them at birth and let them mature together? So that's kind of where the Arden American idea came from. And originally we were chatting to the guys at Bimber about it, and it just never quite happened at Bimber. I think there were some issues with the legality of what we were going to call the spirit and so on. But that's not off the table. We will look at doing it with Bimber again. But anyway, the guys at Arden American were really keen. So what we did is we took one single variety of barley from one single field, malted at a single facility. The barley was then split and went to Arden American, and some went to Dornoch, and then it was processed in our own particular way. So in Dornoch, it was with open top wooden washbacks, liquid brewer's yeast, slow distillation, cut points done by senses, and then Arden American produced in their particular style. And then we brought the spirit back together at 63.5% alcohol, and then we filled it into cask.
Cool.
So the idea is we've gone from the one source with the barley to the one source of the maltings, and then out to the two distilleries, and then back together for blending, and then full maturation.
Really kindred spirits.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just fun. I'd love to see more collaborations like this in Scotch whisky, and I think the more that the small guys like us, or Rassay, or McNean, Wolfburn, the more that we're, the stronger we become, the more these opportunities will occur. And I love it in the brewing industry. I love seeing, collaborative
Yeah.
processes. I think it's great. So I want to see more of that. I want to see more of that, especially when it comes to the ingredients as well. And looking at like single origin ingredients and then processing them in different facilities and seeing what kind of liquid comes out. So yeah, pretty excited.
Very cool. Yeah. All right.
Busy will be the word for the next couple of years, I think.
That's good. And I think that a lot of people here, I'm probably the first one. Eric hinted at it too. As soon as I can come back to Scotland, I'll try to visit Dornoch again, because the last time I was there was in 2012, and I didn't even really know what you were doing back then. So I did visit the bar, but it was a long time ago. So. Yeah. So guys, I don't see any more questions in the chat, so I think I'm going to close the official part of the tasting here. If you're, unless you want to keep on talking, of course, because we can listen to you for the entire evening if you want.
You guys go ahead, and we'll. I'll probably wander off in the not too distant future, but.
Yeah, no, but I think we're going to officially close the tasting here by thanking you guys a lot for your time, for sharing these incredible bottles with us, especially the cask sample. And I think all of us will be following you in the next couple of years to see what you guys are up to. So yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
Thank you very much for having us. Yeah, and then thanks to everyone for turning up and drinking our liquid.
Yeah.